to celebrate his birthday with some friends of his down in Charleston, South Carolina. They're gonna see the sight, and he even told me that he was gonna do some ghost hunting. Now doesn't that sound like some fun? Well, you wildcats, have a good time, and if you can't be good, be careful.
It's dark, windy, and the soundscape of the ocean in front of me sends me into a relaxing state. I'm out here at Folly Beach and taking it all in before I have to head back to our room, out on Meeting Street. Mikey was gonna shower and take a nap. Sean and Vic were gonna watch some TV, and I think that they were gonna sack out. I look over the ocean and see mostly clear sky, with stars filling every single piece of the night with their tiny glow. I have my radio on just fading away and ready to listen to the old tape that I made from a recording of Chet Atkins and his Caribbean guitars. This is Serenity. Relax to the max. But I don't want to fade too much and fall asleep instead of hitting up Charleston and seeing what's up with the nightlife. I have about another little while till I have to head back, but I wanted to take some time and talk about the places we want to see tonight. First of all, we wanted to head back to the old church cemeteries and grab some footage there. And this time, hoping luck will be with us. Then we want to go down to the old city jail and try to check out that place. I doubt we can sneak in, but if we could walk the grounds a bit and give it the old college try. The old city jail is the final resting place of Lavinia Fisher. Her and her husband spent their last hours there. This is the legend of her story. Lavinia Fisher and her husband. The last fling with the morbid life they led was brought to a halt by a traveler named John Peoples. He rode along the weary road and came upon 6 Mile Inn. John was offered tea and was basically forced to drink the tea that had laudanum in it. John was leery of this and he dumped the tea into a nearby plant. Later in his room, he was unsettled and couldn't sleep. He did not stay in bed. He quietly went to the chair in the room and waited. Suddenly there was a loud sound and John was woken up, and as he scanned the room and saw a light where the bed had been, he snuck over to the opening in the floor and saw Mr. Fisher with an axe in his hand and was ready for the unknown victim to drop right into his hands. Peoples ran out of the room and down the dark stairs and fled to town and got the authorities and told them of what had happened. And they all went to 6 Mile. The place was abandoned, and upon more speculation of the basement, several bodies were there. Eventually, the Fishers were arrested and sent to the old city jail to wait out their demise. The Charleston Courier provided this article in the newspaper of February 22nd of 1819, all about the Fishers' arrest. In Saturday's Courier, we gave some particulars of the conduct of a set of outlaws who have for a long time past infested the road in the vicinity of this city, and whose outrageous conduct had of late become insupportable. We then stated that the occupants of a small house 5 miles from town and had been driven out, and the building burnt to the ground, and that of certain others in possession of a house a mile 1 above had been compelled to leave it, and another person put in possession of it by the owner. It now appears that as soon as the citizens had returned to town, the persons who had been thus compelled to leave the last mentioned house returned to it and beat the person who had been put in possession of it in a most inhuman manner. When he escaped into the woods and made the best of his way to town, the same gang stopped a traveler up the road and beat him cruelly, cut his head in several places, and then robbed him of about 30 or 40 in money. These circumstances being made known to the civil authority, the sheriff of this district collected a posse of citizens and proceeded on Saturday afternoon to the spot, surrounded the house, and seized upon its occupants 3 men and 2 women. After which they had burnt the house and outbuildings to the ground, without allowing the occupants to remove any article of its contents, brought the offenders to town, and committed them to the jail. The posse found in an outhouse the hide of a cow, which had been recently killed, and which was identified to be the property of one of our citizens. She had been missing for several days, and this accounts for the manner in which these cows were disposed of, which were so frequently stolen and never afterward heard of. The inmates of the house were armed with about 10 or 12 muskets and a keg of powder, but the force which went against them was too imposing to admit any chance of success in a resort to arms. One of the leaders in these high-handed depredations was arrested into town on Saturday afternoon and likewise committed to jail. We trust that these decisive steps will resort quiet to the neighborhood and enable our county brethren to enter and leave the city without the fear of insult or robbery. The following is a correct list of the members of the gang who were apprehended and committed to prison on Saturday night. John Fisher, Lavinia Fisher, his wife, W.M. Hayward, James Elway, Jane Howard, and Seth Young. It is supposed that more of them are lurking about, and it is hoped the vigilance of the police and citizens will ferret them and bring them to justice. We are informed and requested to state that Mr. John People, who was robbed and unmercifully beaten by the villains mentioned above, is an honest, industrious young man from the country and had a sum of money entrusted in his care, which the robbers took from him. Mr. Fisher hung until dead, and being hung in those days was more of a strangulation rather than a broken neck. After the sudden drop and stop of her husband, Lavinia realized that she was really about to die, and the fact that she tried to get sympathy wearing her wedding dress. This was a fail to the biggest. She was asked if she had any last words. If anyone has a message for the devil, tell me, for I'm about to meet him. But Lavinia had been said to have jumped to seal her own fate rather than let someone else. And she jumped off the cart. As myths have it, it was told by some that it took her a long time to die, and she was screaming and cursing at anything around her. Within moments and hours of her execution, there are stories of a woman walking within the cells and through the walls. Was it Lavinia, or just the paranoid mind of a prisoner in the city jail? Their bodies were buried, but Lavinia's was buried in a potter's field, or as some legends have it, she is buried in an unmarked grave in an untold cemetery. But is it a myth or is it filled with spotted truth? Some more secluded stories was that Lavinia was of mixed race, and that is why her and her husband John lived 6 miles out of Charleston's inner city. Even if the Fishers were innocent, Lavinia's spirit is said to have been seen in the city jail, as well as the Unitarian cemetery, and maybe even another place of her unrest. So it's about time to pick up and head back to Mikey. I get up and wipe as much sand off as possible and make my way to the car. After a while of thinking about the places we are gonna go tonight, the ride took no time at all. After a while, Mikey and I started on our journey for the night. Gaily bedight, oh gallant night, in sunshine and in shadow, had journeyed long, singing a song, in search of El Dorado. I always liked that poem of Edgar Poe's, and fun fact, he was even stationed here once upon a time. We rolled onto Church Street and we found a place to park. Investigation begins. We enter the front gates of the round church and look to the sea of graves. God's acres. Green acres is the place to be. Well, maybe not the right time for this song. Well, not right now. The amber light of the street lamps gave this place an eerie feeling, and even sends chills down the old spine, as it were. We walk slowly. We capture what we can. There's a wind that seems to come out of nowhere, and we brace ourselves for this cold blast of cool, sweet-smelling air. After about 40 minutes of investigating the Unitarian Cemetery, we walked over to where St. Philip's Church is. But before we headed to the church, we go to an alley right behind it, and it is said to be one of the scariest alleys in all of the city. We walk slowly down the street. We see nothing and hear silence all around. Not even the insects and the frogs that litter this area. I had my camcorder set to night vision because there isn't any light out in this back alley, except for the far street lights and not even a back door light to illuminate the back passage. We move around to the end of the street and we walk to the entrance of St. Philip's Yard. The mighty steeple that is seen today wasn't built until the late 1840s, or was it the 1850s? I don't know. But it's also been said that this steeple was a lighthouse to the ships that came into the harbor in the very early 1900s, and probably a few years before. History has a weird line, you know? Documents of the era document different dates, and seems conflicting at times. During the 1800s, there was a horrific earthquake that set the steeple of St. Philip's to a slight angle sway. It can still be seen to this day. We hit up the circular church grounds after. These gravestones can be seen by all and have some depictions of someone on them. It was usually the last picture, a sketch. Some of the gravestones can be seen by all, and some had depictions on some of them. It was the last picture, so to speak, of this person whom was buried there. And these sketches were made during the time of the deceased, and then they were carved and sent to this church. The stones were imported from another area because the stones used at that time were not part of Charleston, but carved around the New England area. The church that is seen today was either the third or fourth church erected on this site. But anyways, with the building of the current church we see today, it is actually built on top of unmarked graves. There was a woman that was said to have had lost both of her children to the succumbs of the yellow fever, and myths of her spirit coming out of her grave and looking for her children. We decided to walk it, since it's less than a mile at least, and keep the camcorder going. As we get along, we go to Poogan's porch. Poogan was a stray dog that hung out, and after he had passed on to the next realm, he decided to stay on this property. There's an area near the front porch where Poogan is buried. Besides Poogan, there is more to this place than meets the eye. In several places in this building that became a restaurant in the 1970s. Many have felt a touch or a glimpse of something that still lingers here. We move along a little bit more to Franklin Street, and to our right is the city jail, to our 2 o'clock. Onto the city jail. The city jail looks more like a castle than a jail. Tall walls, and if anyone uses some imagination, there could be a place on top of this great building with gargoyles. One of the architects of this city's jail was of Robert Mills, the designer of the Washington Monument and the Robert Mills House in Columbia. The jail was meant to hold any pirate, highwayman, or murderer, or anyone who offended just the daily laws was thrown in here. There was said to have been about 14,000 who have died around this area. Even in the Civil War time, Northern African American troops were imprisoned here, and instead of being sold or thrown into slavery, many thought that they should be seen as Union soldiers, as they should be. It has been stated to be one of the most haunted places of all the United States. As we walk the side street of this place, we look around for any spectators. We waited for the tour guide that I had called earlier in the day just to see if we could get in, and yep, that's our good news. The tour guide shows up. We finally go in and look around and see if there are any specters. We go from area to area, just looking around and asking a few questions here and there to see if there is anyone who wants to talk. As we walk through some of the rooms, we can see the existing areas where the bars were that kept these prisoners in this place. As we enter one of the rooms, we see an old wheelchair that is just sitting there. We move a little bit closer to inspect it, and I see dust all over the chair, except the place where the butt would be, and the leg plates also. It looked as if someone had just sat there. But the dust removal could have just been from anyone who sat in the chair, but they had little ropes around it so no one could actually sit in it. So what was it? Was it human or a supernatural being? We crept along to the rooms and kept the camcorder and night vision recording. As we go from room to room, we would ask questions and can't hear anything at present. But when we go through the footage, hopefully we can find something. Something that we didn't hear at the time. This is often the case during any kind of paranormal hunt. Moving deeper into the dark, cool rooms, we slowly walk around. As I walk in between the cells, I could hear something like whispers around me, but it could also be the wind. There was a few times where it felt like someone was tousling my hair. Felt like cobwebs getting stuck in my coif, you know? And then I got a cold chill down my spine, as if someone ran their hand from the neck down to my butt. Exciting. Well, not in that way. I ask another round of questions and keep our pace steady. Later, we went on to what's known as the iron room. The walls were lined with these steel plates and made escaping almost impossible. As we walked from corner to corner, I asked who was there. From what I can hear, is still silence. Who are you? I asked 2 or 3 times, just to be able to give the spirits a chance to speak up. Nothing. I walked to the center of the room and asked if there is anyone who wants to speak. I don't hear anything at present, but when Mikey and I go over the evidence of the night, we hear voices on what we had asked. Who's here? How many of you are in here right now? Is there anyone innocent of their crimes? Who here did the worst of their crimes? Who is the best of the worst? Near the entrance, we hear a groan. It was subtle at first, but as I got a few more questions in, the groaning became more of a growl. I motioned for Mikey and I to walk closer and see if we can get any kind of video, audio, or a few meter readings from the electromagnetic field. The EMF meter is used because ghosts or specters, or whatever name, is given to the spirits that roam this earth. They can be picked up with this device. As we near closer to the door that leads to the dark hallway, that seems darker than it was when we first walked through. Or maybe it was our nerves getting the best of us. We hear another growl that seemed to be from something else. And right behind that voice was another one talking. It was inaudible, but we crept closer to see if we could make out what was said. Speak louder, I say as I sneak to the sounds that I hear. We hear more talking, and the only thing we hear is leave, go, and even other words that didn't sound so angry toward us. I could barely hear the words, help me, and don't go. Are you innocent or guilty? I holler. Don't let them kill me, I hear louder than the other voices that started to fill the halls and walls of this dimming place. As we move closer and closer to the hall, we see a dim light coming from one of the cells. It is green and red and seems to have a pulse in its illumination. Do you see the light ahead? I ask. Yeah, dude. I was just thinking it was me, Mikey says. Come on, let's check it out, I say to Mikey. We pick up our pace and move to the cell with the lights. And they seem to fade with a scream from something that didn't sound like a man or a woman. But what? I pan my camcorder around as Mikey tries to get readings from the EMF detector. We only use our red lens army lights to help us see in the dark room. It is easier on the eyes than the standard yellow glow. I can hardly make out the shadows that seem to peer out of the open cell door and dart from corner to corner, as if they thought they couldn't be seen. There was even a few dark masses moving in our direction. Oh man, this is a ghost hunter's extravaganza. The amount of spirits we feel around us is immense. The flash that I had connected to my belt flickered and went out. I pulled it from its resting place and banged it against my leg a few times, and nothing happened. Surprising. Usually this method works, but the best I can figure, whatever was around us soaked up all the juice that these D batteries had. Batteries are dead, I said. I walked forward because, man, there's probably something about to go wild and I can't fret over a dead flashlight. Mikey had his, and the tour guide also had whatever he brought. And this guy even stayed behind us. Well, I don't blame him. As I take the left side and Mikey takes the right, I trip over something that was like in the middle of the floor. I stayed on the ground and panned my camera 360. Who did that? I asked. Silence. Come on, you can talk. Who did I stumble over? Silence. From behind me, I feel this whoosh, and a coldness that seemed like I had stepped into a restaurant freezer, and I started to feel weak, and I went down to one knee. Mikey stopped where he was and looked at me, and moved his EMF over to my area. Mikey's eyes got a bit wider. What? I asked. It just jumped on here a few times, while he was looking at the meter instead of me. Oh, word? I say. What's it doing now? I asked. It's still bumping from the bottom to the top, and keeps repeating. I get back to my feet and Mikey walks closer and we move on from there. We hear the talking and chattering, and we head to the stairs and seem to float down them. Of course we had to follow it. We keep going from floor to floor and try to get something good on camera. But when we thought we had come to a close of our night, we heard a loud yell from all around us. Not just a voice, but so many that it felt like it were a concert. The sound of their yells was so loud, and the tour guide told us it's probably safest to leave now. We took him at his word, and we rushed to the exit because the guide was booking it. As the front door is thrown open by the guide, Mikey and I get to the door and slam it shut, and ajar again. We walk out, and I turn around and zoom in, and try to get any shot through the window that I can. I see a glare off of the streetlights and move around. I see what seems to be movement, but can't really see anything. As the guide locks up the door and gates the padlock, we turn off our gear, and we hope that we caught something. The tour guide seems to be a bit on the nervous side, and we thank him for allowing us to investigate here. And with the excitement and butterflies throughout our bodies, we make it to the car. We get in and take a moment. Wow, that was cool, dude, I say. Yeah, it was, Mikey says. Too bad the tour guide bolted, right? I know, huh? I say. I hand Mikey the camcorder, and he starts to rewind it a bit, and plugged it into the audio cord into the makeshift cassette I have for my radio. We can hear the audio through the car speakers this way. We hear us in the room, talking to anyone who will talk, and we can surprisingly hear whispers and distant talking and even cries, and all in the background of what we are doing. Oh yeah, man, this is good, I say. Rewind it a bit further, and we can listen to it on the ride back to the room. Mikey agrees and stops the camcorder and presses rewind. Mikey holds the camcorder viewer up to his eye and stops it moments later. We hear more than what was audible through our human ears. The microphone seems to pick up something unique. We hear something talking, and all that came along with the prison that held at least 500 souls. We pull up to our room and sit in the car until the video is over. You know, dude, this is pretty good, Mikey says. We actually got something on here, and it's worth more than just a random orb or a light show. Dude, we have some dark shapes walking around and voices too, man. Mikey was right. This was really something special. We grab our gear and locked up the car and head in for some shut-eye. We can look more at what we have when we get back to Columbia, but for now, we're gonna get some sleep and get the day going with some more Charleston City enjoyment, maybe even the beach again. We took a vote and decided to stay another night. So let's see what happens on the morrow.
All right, sweet baby. You know I'm gonna do you right, the way you want to be done. Got tons of things to do and plenty of things to say. So we are gonna pop till you drop and pushing that big old tush. Ha 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 ha.